introduce the candidates for Senate District number 6. We have Pat Petty, Democrat, the challenger. We have Chris Steiniger, Republican, who's the incumbent. Understand, Ms. Petty, that you won the coin toss. We'll ask you to begin your introductory comments first. I'm sorry?
Okay, I said I think I actually lost the coin toss, but Chris was one of them. But I won that part. Okay, sorry. Well, I'm Pat Petty, and I want to thank you all for staying since it's been a long evening, and we are now the last on the docket here. And I want to thank the Chamber and all the NBRs and the neighborhood organizations and the community college for their involvement to have this going on tonight. A little bit about me. I'm an original Dot, and I've taught 36 years in the Turner School District. That's my as a career educator there. I am married to John Petty for 42 years, and we have 2 daughters, Alicia and Andrea, and 5 grandchildren. I've had the opportunity over the years to become involved very much in my community, and I thank my parents for that upbringing and that placing those values in me. You have, in the past, elected me to the Kansas Legislature. I was there for 2 terms in the mid-90s. And following that, I was a commissioner with the Unified Government for 13 and a half years. So I bring to this position a lot of experience both at the state level and at the local level, which I think makes me a very qualified candidate to understand how state government impacts local government and how local government has benefited but also been hampered by the restrictions and the delays that have occurred with some legislation at the state level. I'm looking forward to working with you and for you when I'm elected to the 6th District. Thank you.
Senator Steiniger, please.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Chris Steiniger, State Senator for the 6th District. The 6th District is essentially the southern half of Wyandotte County. Rosedale, Armourdale, Argentine, Central Avenue, City Park, Turner, Muncie, where I live, a little bit of Edwardsville, now up north to Providence Hospital area and down south, jumping the county line into Merriam, and even a precinct over in Overland Park. So it's a very diverse district. My background is I'm born and raised in Wyandotte County, just like Pat, frankly, like a lot of people here in the audience. I was born in '62 at the old Providence Hospital, and I was born and raised, grew up in the Muncie neighborhood back when that was a rural area, and watched that area transform into now industrial, replacing the old farming area that I grew up with. I've been in the state legislature since 1996. I've been elected every 4 years since that time. My background is in government, business, and in the private sector. Many years ago, I worked on the Washington, D.C. staff of Congressman Jim Slattery. That was when I was right out of college. It was a great, great experience for a young person who's interested in government to work on Capitol Hill, and I loved every minute of it. I also worked, when Governor Joan Finney was our governor, I worked in the State Department of Revenue, and actually had a short stint in the Kansas City manager's office. That was before we unified the government. My private sector experience, I'm born and raised in a family of entrepreneurs. In my family, we have farmers and restaurateurs. A sister owns a microbrewery in California. A brother is a financial planner. Myself, I'm in real estate. And I've also worked in the social services area. I formerly was the development director at Crosslines Cooperative Council down in Armourdale. So a broad array of experience is what I bring to the job, and it's helped make me a broader, more in-depth decision maker. Thank you.
Senator Steiniger, we'll start with you. Wyandotte County has many jobs that require technical skills, with more jobs needing these skills coming in the future. What have you done as a legislator to ensure that our citizens are educated to take and succeed in these current jobs, as well as those jobs that have not yet been created?
Well, I think the first thing is the jobs that need to be created. Obviously, there's kids going through college and technical training now that want a job when they finish it. If you watch the presidential debate last night, a young man asked a question to Mitt Romney. I'm in college now. What job will await me when I graduate? Well, what the state legislature has done, first off, we're trying to get the economy going again through a combination of cutting taxes for business and individuals to get the job market going again. Also trying to find ways to gradually deregulate and lessen the paperwork burden on small business people so small business people can hire more. Another thing we did just this past legislative session, we passed a new technical education bill, which essentially is designed to make it simpler and easier for young people or middle-aged people to go to tech school or community colleges and earn a technical degree as opposed to a four-year degree. One thing we found even before the recession started, and still with the recession today and all the unemployment, there are still many technical jobs out there that are going unfilled. Everything from x-ray technician, medical device installer, to welder and even auto mechanic. There are many tech jobs that don't require a four-year degree that are unfilled now, and I think that's good news. We just need to make sure our young people and middle-aged people get into those jobs.
Pat Petty, do you want me to repeat the question?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I am very much committed to making education a priority. Education is the most important factor in economic and social well-being as measured by income, employment, crime, and social services. Kansas presently ranks 6th in the nation in educational achievement and 26th in per pupil expenditure. After 3 years of devastating cuts, our schools are being funded at the same level that they were 11 years ago. We are now beginning to see the impact of these cuts. We can't talk about technical education if we aren't providing quality education at all levels. I am going to Topeka to support funding for quality education. It has to start at the state level. Without that, we will see property tax increases here in Wyandotte County and in Johnson County. There's no way around it. So when we talk about technical education and how can we expand on it, this community college is working hard to make that happen, but they won't be able to do that with what's happening as far as tax cuts are concerned. So we have to look at the systemic problem here, and that's money. If we don't fund our schools, then we can't even talk about what kind of quality education we're providing because it's going to be reduced. And we're seeing that happening already. So we have to talk about what's going to fund those technical jobs.
Thank you very much. Now we'll start with Pat Petty again. What do you believe are the 3 top responsibilities of a state senator from the 6th District?
That's a good question. Well, I think the number 1 responsibility is to look at how we're funding how we're taking care of our financial problems at the state level. That's number 1. And right now, that's why I'm running for the Senate, because we are in a position where we're not doing a good job of that. Number 2, Senator, and I will talk about this as being a legislator, a senator has to be responsive to their constituents and listen to their concerns and their needs. Number 3, a legislator has to do their job. They have to be in Topeka. It's a 90-day session, and they have to be there when they're supposed to be there, doing their job and voting when they're supposed to be voting, and not letting trips or other things stand in the way of that responsibility. I did that when I was there as a legislator, and I will do that as a senator.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Steiner?
Well, I think the top 3 things to be a good legislator, one is to have a good sense of where our country is and where our state is and where our county is and where we need to go in the future. Obviously, the past 20 years have seen our country rack up a huge amount of debt, borrowing and spending and living beyond our means, and that's ultimately what brought the economy crashing down in 2008. We created a debt bubble, we created an economic boom funded by debt, and the whole thing burst in 2008 and 9. And we can't keep living that way. And I think the number 1 thing for any legislator, mayor, congressman, even the president, is you got to have a long-term vision, and long-term means it exceeds your lifetime. America, Kansas, Wyandotte County have all been here before I was born, and they'll be here after I'm dead. And I think the number one thing is a good politician, a good public policy maker looks way down the road, beyond your lifetime, beyond the lifetime of your constituents. What does it take to keep the engine going? What does it take to keep the community and the state going beyond our lifetime? Number two, I think you've got to be open and listening to what your constituents' needs are. And I've tried very hard over 16 years to attend all the neighborhood groups, to return phone calls as much as possible within 24 hours, even when I'm traveling or even when I'm in Topeka, to be available to people and hear their concerns. And number three is to try and vote and deliver what they really need versus what they may want. Mohandas Gandhi once said, famously, reduce your wants and satisfy your needs. And I think in recent years, Americans have wanted more than they really needed, and their reach exceeded their grasp. And I think a good politician knows to give them what they need, not always what they want.
We're going to stay with education here for just a minute, and I'm going to somewhat combine two questions that you may have heard other candidates and elected folks answer previously tonight, and that is around K through 12 education. Senator Steiniger, we'll start with you. Knowing how education is funded now, what would you do as a legislator to fund K-12? And as a follow-up to that, what measure do you think they should be held to for accountability? What would say K-12 is successful?
Okay. Well, first off, education begins in the home. It doesn't begin in Topeka, and it doesn't begin with money. It begins with a kid that wants to learn, and it begins with parents that encourage and inspire that child to want to learn and to value intelligence. You can have the best schools in the world, the biggest funded schools like they have in Blue Valley, and there are still kids in Blue Valley that drop out or fail, despite all the money they spend. So it's not just the money you spend or even how you spend it. It begins in the home with a kid that wants to learn, and parents and other family members and neighbors that encourage and inspire that child to want to learn more. At the state level, we do supply money. I always tell people it's like the state legislature is like being the parent of a college student. We supply money on a monthly basis, and we hope they spend it well. To me, the best way to measure outcomes of how well our schools are doing is, are these kids ready to compete in the global world when they graduate from high school? Are these kids ready to go toe-to-toe with the Chinese and the Indians and the Germans and all the other young people, their global cohort? Are our young people ready to go toe-to-toe and compete successfully and happily? And if the answer is yes, then we're succeeding. Unfortunately, we keep hearing reports that our test scores globally are falling behind. They look good in the Midwest, Kansas versus other Midwestern states. But we hear about a lot of test scores of American kids are not keeping up in math and science with their global peers, and that worries me.
Pat Petty?
We're doing a great job in Kansas. We're ranked 6th in the nation in standards that are used to measure schools. And we're ranked 26th in per pupil spending. So our schools are doing an outstanding job with a little bit of money. And our state government has been reducing that. And we, in turn, have been expecting more and more from our schools. I think that we do want to have great schools. We all want to. Over the years, as an educator, I've seen that every parent wants their child to succeed. Now, that being said, and at my last 10 years were spent as a preschool teacher, and so I'm getting those children just as they're coming in. And their families are excited about them being there. But, unfortunately, there are many challenges facing our families today. And so that is where, yes, parents are the first teachers, but they need that assistance of the schools to support them. We can't do that without adequate funding. So the last 3 years have seen our schools get 12% less, or they're being funded at the level they were funded 11 years ago. That can't continue if we're going to have quality education in the state of Kansas.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I'll start with Pat Petty. Would you support the continued efforts at KU Hospital and KU Medical Center to expand in Wyandotte and Johnson County?
Absolutely. KU is the #1 employer in Wyandotte County. And KU is recognized as, they now have their cancer,
NCI?
NCI, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word. They now have that recognition, which they worked for over 10 years to achieve. So they're recognized nationally and internationally as an outstanding cancer institute. They're recognized throughout the Midwest as a #1 research and patient hospital. So I think, and they have worked, I will say, I believe that through the last 10 to 12 years, they've also worked at becoming a better community partner. When I first was elected as commissioner, there was the KU Med Center, and then there was, the needs of the community, and they weren't always meshing. So there's been an improvement over the last 10 years for KU to be interested and be a committed member of the community that they are part of. So I absolutely support their expansion and their giving back to Wyandotte County.
Thank you. Senator Steiniger?
Well, to me, the bigger picture is that American health care is the most expensive health care in the industrialized world. We Americans spend a greater percentage of GDP or on a per capita basis than any of our competitors by far. And it's hurting us. It hurts us in global competitiveness, whether we're trying to export Boeings or sell Kansas wheat and beef. The high cost of health care in the United States is a detriment to our nation's global competitiveness, and we've got to reduce the long-term costs of health care. A lot of people like to blame insurance companies, and that's rightfully so, but to be honest, if you look at the whole picture analytically and not emotionally, hospitals bear some of the burden of our high costs. If you look at some of the administrative salaries, frankly, some of the buildings that are, in my opinion, overbuilt, that are more than is necessary, I think these are some of the reasons we have high-cost health care in our country. There are many other reasons as well. Certainly, I'm glad to have the jobs and the payroll that KU Hospital and the Med Center bring in our community. I always like to point out, though, remember, it's a $1 billion piece of real estate, and it pays 0 property taxes. I like to point out it's got a huge multi-$100 million payroll. 90% of it goes outside of Wyandotte County. 90% of the jobs are not Wyandotte County jobs. A few, like Kathy, have a job and live here, but most of the money goes outside of our community. There's no property taxes generated, and there's a huge impact on our streets and our sewer systems that we get to pay for. So there is a plus and a minus to having KU Hospital and Med Center in our community. I just urge you to think of it in a balanced approach.
Thank you. Pat Petty, we'll start with you on this question. How would you, or how have you, supported redevelopment of the blighted areas in your district, specifically thinking about the 6th District and your potential work as a state senator?
Well, since I haven't been a state senator, I have a hard time talking about how I have done it. I can speak about how I have done it as a commissioner. Incentives sometimes get a bad hype, but then incentives are great when they do something for where you're at. So I said earlier that I was a commissioner for 13 and a half years. I was part of the first changeover to commission, and so I had the opportunity to be a voting member of making those decisions, of having the Speedway come to Wyandotte County, to having the Legends development, to vote for Cerner, to actually vote for us to go to work with Google. So I've been part of seeing that all along the way, and yes, along the way there have been incentives that have helped, but those incentives are all giving back to us because we are benefiting from that 10 million people that are coming into our county every year into the area. In the 6th district, those similar types of incentives have been used to redevelop the shopping mall at 47th and Shawnee Drive. I was just having a conversation with some friends and family about how that raises up people's feelings about their community because it looks nice and it's providing quality goods and services for them close to home.
Senator Steiniger.
Well, a lot of politicians like to take credit for everything possible. If the lights are on, some politician will take credit for that. But, and I'm not one for normally talking about those kinds of things. But I think in general, some things about getting more money for our schools in the years the economy was booming. I worked really hard to get more money for Turner and KCK schools, and in a bipartisan way. It's not just me in the legislature. You have to have a majority to get things done. And another project I guess I was involved in was the Turner Bridge project. It was about 10 years ago. There was an old Turner Bridge in the Muncie-Turner area. It was a priority for the state, but I helped encourage them to get it done a few years earlier. Now, 10 years later, it's still standing there. But I think one thing we all need to realize, and this is probably something that differentiates me from Pat, is the role of the private sector. It's not government. Government's about 10% of the equation. 90% of the equation is private investment, whether it's General Motors or Swift Eckridge or Burlington Northern Santa Fe or formerly Colgate Palmolive. You got to have private business that wants to invest in your community. And we've been pretty successful out in the western part of our community. We need more help in the inner city. I've put my own private capital. My wife and I have bought a number of clunker houses and fixed them up and made them nice again. And one you may have seen in the newspapers before and might again is the former Lowell School building that's now been made into 27 apartments for senior citizens. It's a showpiece in the inner city. And I'm very proud to say I risked my own retirement money to get that project done, and now it's done, and everybody around that area seems to like it.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for your responses. We now move into the closing statement segment. And Senator Steiniger, if you will begin, you have 2 minutes. Ms. Petty, you will follow, please.
Well, I appreciate everyone for coming out and especially for sticking around for us the last couple of debates here. Well, I think I'm the best candidate based on experience, not just in the legislature, but in the private sector as well. I mean, as I said before, you got to have private sector involvement in everything we do, whether it's NASCAR or Cerner or rehabbing old schools and houses. You got to have private money and private entrepreneurs, whether they're small entrepreneurs or great big corporations. And I think my knowledge and family background in small business is very, very helpful. And the fact that I've worked in the social services area, Crosslines Cooperative Council in Armourdale, I may be a Republican, but I do have a Democrat heart for people that are truly struggling. Another thing I would say is this may be a Democrat county, Wyandotte County, with a long Democrat history, but we operate in the state legislature in a very red state. The state House of Representatives is 75% Republican. The state Senate is 80% Republican. And I think it is in Wyandotte County's best interest to have reasonable Republicans as part of our delegation so we can better get stuff done. I always remember when we used to have former state rep Ray Cox, and he was our token Republican, and we always had an in the governor's office with Ray Cox. And I hope to provide that similar role in coming years as the reasonable Republican from Wyandotte County who has an in a Republican state. I ask for your consideration and your vote for those of you that live in the 6th District, and I thank you for your time.
Ms. Petty?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to have this forum here tonight. I am a Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I support democratic values. Our community is, based on a middle-class families, and I'm here to support middle-class families. The most important thing in this race is looking at who's going to go up there and work for you, and I am that candidate. We need to look at this tax structure that's just been put in place by our governor, and it needs to be changed. I'm planning on going to Topeka to work for that, because without that, we are going to see property taxes increases here in Wyandotte County. And I will be working for property tax and reduction, not property tax increases. The 2011 State Business Tax Climate Index said that Kansas ranks 10th in the nation for high property tax, but the same study ranked Kansas 30th in the nation for income tax. So we don't have an income tax problem, but we do have a property tax problem. I'm proud of the endorsements that I have. I've been endorsed by KNEA, by KNEA Wyandotte United, the Kansas City Star, who said that I am the candidate that should be going to Topeka because I have the experience and I have the background to do that. And unfortunately, my opponent has outlived his usefulness. I am endorsed by the heavy contractors, Planned Parenthood, the Kansas City Firefighters Local 64, the Kansas UAW Local 31, Tri-County, Kansas Families for Education, Shawnee Mission NEA, IBEW Local 53, Kansas Association of Justice, the Fraternal Order of Police, the Polish American Democratic Club, and the International Association of Mechanics. I'm a working person. I have done that all my life, and I represent you as working people. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you both for your participation this evening. The sponsoring organizations this evening again want to thank the candidates for participating and being very respectful of the time restraints. We appreciate that of all the participants this evening.